All right, here we got some good questions coming in. I want to make sure we make good use of people's time. Oh yeah, so things are starting to open up. People want to know where Portal is going, and we can both take a shot at that. But you, Mark, you really put a lot of energy into Portal during the pandemic. It became such a lifeline for us at the company with employees working from home. Where do you see Portal going in the long term?
Yeah, well, look, I do think a lot of norms got established during the pandemic that I think are going to be around for a long time, right? So people are more likely, I think, to just casually want to do video calls and with friends and do social gatherings that way when people can't be together. Before that was kind of like, all right, that's not so fun. We'll just hang out with the people who are around us. It's and this is going to be sort of annoying if that's if you have to do this over video. But now I think that that's just a more normal thing, and both for work and doing a lot more video, and and hanging out. I think that's going to be a big thing. So all this stuff. I mean, I try to not mess this up because I don't know. It's hard for me to keep in mind exactly which of the details of what we're working on are public and not. But we have an exciting roadmap of stuff that basically leans into what I think are going to be some of the new social norms around video presence. And that certainly connects to the bigger picture of all the AR and VR stuff that we do. Because a lot of people think about VR and AR, it's like there are these technologies. Really what they are is tools and platforms to deliver a sense of presence. And video does that too. It's not ideal, it's 2D. It's when I see you on a screen, I can kind of get a sense of what's going on with you, but I sort of still need to trick my mind into feeling like I'm there with you. Whereas VR and AR really just, make you in a very native way feel like you're there with the person. But video, for a lot of people, it's the best that we have for presence today, and we view this as all just kind of one extension. Extended product category in Facebook Reality Labs of like, here's all the ways that you're going to feel present with people.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, like locally, just looking at Portal, you're right. Like connecting people during the pandemic was a great, an important piece. Connecting people who work together is an ongoing piece that's going to be, and I think that is a part of the macro shift for us there. But it does stitch into something bigger. This is a good example right here. One-on-one communication, even over this mobile phone, and I have a mini phone, is pretty good. But as soon as you start adding more people, you need space. Like that's how your brain understands group conversations. Like side conversations are impossible on VC, totally reasonable in real life. I'm going to tie into this and then I'm going to get back to the questions. You got to try this week, Mark. I've teased a little bit in the past that we're working on tools for people to collaborate at work. And you got a chance to jump in with me this week on one of those tools. I take meetings in VR every week, and I tell people that that's something that we're working on, that we're developing. And it gets directly to the point you're talking about. It's just so much easier. We actually had side conversations effectively in a virtual meeting, and you can't do it on VC. You can't do it without spatial audio.
Yeah, but I also think, one of the things that really clicked for me is I have a hard time sometimes remembering all the video conversations that I do because there's no sense of space, right? It's like, this is how we form memories, is like, all right, you're to my right and I'm to your left, and we kind of are in a space together. But, now it feels like a lot of the place that the conversations happen is, over video conference, you're in some kind of grid, is like the space that you're in, and everything sort of blends together. Which again, it's better than a lot of the other tools that we have, and we help hundreds of millions of people a month have those kind of conversations, right? And between WhatsApp and Messenger, we're probably building the two of the biggest and leading video chat services in the world. But I just think the promise is so much greater on VR and AR, and the demo and the work that we're doing, over there, and some of the things that we have coming not too far down the line, which I think is going to be really exciting. Help you deliver the sense of presence. It's not just the spatial audio. It's like you feel like you're in a place. Yeah. Even if you're not actually physically together. It's really cool.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite things to tease all my viewers with, which is it's coming sooner than they think. Of course, they don't know how soon they think it's coming, but that's what I always tell them.
Yeah, and it's tough because I think we think pretty long term, right? That's so true. It's like when you have a 10-year roadmap, saying that something is coming kind of soon is, I think it might be easy to get people's hopes up. But no, this one, if we're doing demos in it can't be that far off.
This one's pretty close. You're right. This is AquaVR, who always comes and comments on and asks questions, great questions at my AMAs. ask a question about assistive touch on iWatch. Did you see that demo that came out for Apple? They're kind of assistive touch. It's very oriented towards accessibility on Apple, but it's kind of a gesture-based control using existing iWatch things. UploadVR, I can tell you right now, we can't answer. We haven't used it. We don't know what it's about. But I do want to. They do ask a question about EMG and the bands that we're talking about with Control Labs instead of Facebook Reality Labs. You from a very long time back had a very strong vision for neural interfaces, the ability to have more fluid controls. You've invested this. Before we worked with Control Labs, we had research in Building 8 that was oriented in this direction. We still have those teams working with UCSF. Talk to me about how you think about why is it so important that we have these higher bandwidth neural interfaces?
Well, whenever you're designing a new platform, I think one of the most important aspects of it is input. I think in a lot of ways that how you control it is the most defining aspect of a platform, right? A lot of people think about AR and VR as sort of what's the output, like what do you see? But I think the bigger thing that defines PCs is you have keyboard and mouse. For phones, it was you have this multi-touch and kind of swipe input. So the question is, what are you going to use to control this natural interface around AR and VR? And our view is that it's going to be somewhat of a combination of things, right? It's like you'll have voice assistants, but that's going to be neat. But you're not always going to want to use voice because there are privacy issues with that. You want to sometimes control things without it kind of telling everyone around you what you're doing. Hands are going to be a thing. People want to control hands, but you're not always going to be walking around through the world with your kind of hands outstretched in front of you doing stuff. So that will work sometimes better than others. I think controllers are going to be one interesting dimension of this too, because as good as hands can get, if you're doing something that's really like a micro movement, any gamer can tell you this. Like actually having a thumb pad. And that kind of tactile feedback is super important. So for things like writing, you want a stylus, it's super helpful to have something physical. But, in some ways, the kind of holy grail of all this is a neural interface, right? Where you basically just think something and your mind kind of tells the computer how you want it to go. And that works. And there's a bunch of research that we and others are doing into this. And I think the key insight that our team has had, a lot of people, when they think about neural interfaces, they think about like, how can we understand what you're thinking? And it's actually not about that, right? You don't want to read the person's mind. You're not trying to understand what they're thinking. What you're trying to do is give the person an ability to have their brain send signals to the rest of the body about how this works. And we have a system that does this, right? With motor neurons, where your brain basically sends signals to your hands and your body, telling them to when you want to make movements, how to control it. And it turns out that we all have some extra redundant capacity for that, right? It's part of the neuroplasticity. So you can if one pathway gets damaged, your brain can kind of get rewired, but you can train those extra pathways to control, for example, a second set of virtual hands. So that way you just kind of think, and like down the line, you're basically, you have your virtual hands are typing, and controlling what you're doing in VR and AR. And then, you don't need to actually have a physical controller or anything like that, because that's awesome. So I think when you get to that, we're going to have this whole kind of constellation of inputs, but I think that's perhaps one of the more ambitious projects that we have going on. But I think it's really promising long term, and I think the team is making good progress towards it.
I enjoyed watching everyone's minds blown as you were going through that. The comments that were flowing by were like, what is Mark talking about? Yeah, no, I agree that as soon as you get into neuroplasticity, I think you had me. It's been pretty staggering. It's truly. Sometimes, I think we do feel held back by the rate at which we can communicate with these machines. They can do so much, but like, can I tell it what I want with enough precision, with enough specificity? And neural interfaces do hold the promise, but of course they are a ways away. So, virtual workrooms sooner, neural interfaces later. That's just a rough sequencing over a 10-year arc. Messier Spheroid, great name. Messier Spheroid asks, I thought you were building an operating system. Why are you building one? Do you want to take that one, Mark?
Yeah, sure. I mean, so first, we are building a reality operating system, right? And that's sort of how we think about it, is that these new platforms are so different from everything that's come before it, not just the input, but the type of the app model, how you're going to discover things, how tightly they need to be optimized, right? If you're building a pair of glasses that need to look like normal glasses, you basically are like, you need to have the system be so tightly optimized so you can basically do, all the computation that you would expect from a modern computer, but do it on someone's face without, like within a thermal envelope and a power envelope that can last all day long. So it's, that's a very big challenge. So, we've the team is pretty far along in this at this point. We're building a microkernel-based operating system, which is the architecture that you want to basically segment the pieces to make it as secure as possible. So that way you have kind of as small of pieces that are going to be fundamentally trustworthy that you can build on top of. But at the end of the day, we need to basically be able to design and customize every layer of the stack in order to build out the performance and efficiency that we need in order to deliver these systems. Yeah. And a lot of the people, Boz. Here's a little known fact. It's when I was getting started with Facebook, a lot of what I studied at Harvard was systems engineering, computer systems engineering. I think it was one of the reasons why Facebook was kind of always able to scale pretty well, is because we have that deep in the DNA of the company. And Boz was actually the teacher or teaching fellow for one of the classes that I took, which is how we originally got connected. And I think how you got to know me and eventually chose to join the company. So, true. Between the two of us, we're not actually the ones building this thing, but it's which is good. But I think the DNA in terms of kind of empathy for these kind of deep computing, like deep systems problems, and how tightly you need to optimize things to be able to kind of deliver such a specific problem space that has never really been solved before. I think that this is absolutely critical. So we're definitely focused on this, and I think we'll have more to share for developers and some folks at some point in the. I guess the theme of today is the not too distant future, but we're going to leave it vague about what that actually means.
Yeah, and one of the questions whenever this comes up, why are you building? I want everyone to know I don't need to build everything myself. This is not. I want to build as little as possible. And Facebook really was built on top of open source. We're big contributors to open source. When software is available for us to use, we love using it. Obviously our Oculus and Portal systems are built on Android, which we've had great success with. So I don't want to build it. I want to build as little as I can. What is amazing is how much you have to build to fit into these tight thermal envelopes. And I do feel at times that mine was a generation of computer programmers who were a little bit lazy. We got to be lazy. We were at just the fattest part of Moore's Law, delivering tremendous gains in silicon. And so you could just write kind of high level, inefficient code, and who cared? We're not up against Moore's Law. Much tougher than that, we're up against the first law of thermodynamics. The amount of heat that we can dissipate off of your face is not very much without burning you, and which we strongly oppose. So for me, I do think we're doing it. Any piece of work you see me doing, you see Facebook Reality Labs doing, I don't want to do that work. I feel like I have to do it to deliver the vision, and building our own reality operating system is a part of that. Okay. Yeah,
it's also worth noting, it's not just the reality operating system. We actually have to go even deeper than that in terms of technical products, right? It's not just kind of making the apps efficient and the system efficient. It's the operating system layer, and then optimizing the hardware and actually building out a bunch of our own custom silicon, right? So it's like all the way up and down the stack. Our hope over time, especially for things like, I guess for both augmented and virtual reality, are that eventually a bunch of the pieces of the stack can become, sufficiently, when this is at a big scale, each layer of the stack will be its own industry by itself. And then you'd want the whole thing to be more modular. So that way, we can work with other partners who are building chips and kind of support a bunch of different people who are building different hardware, different things like that. But for the initial version, in order to get this to be tightly optimized, you really have to go pretty deep in order to deliver something that's the experience that we want and have it last throughout the day.
Yeah, the mobile workloads, have actually, that we use on our phones, we think of those as having been highly efficient performance per watt. Even they're an order of magnitude less efficient than what we need in terms of performance per watt for augmented reality. which is actually pretty demanding. You're doing 3D graphics that have to be responsive to a real world environment. The end-to-end latency there is very tight. So it's a tremendous technical challenge. I have said to people, and I think I'm on good standing here, Michael Abrash, our chief scientist, also our chief historian, keeper of the knowledge of the history of computing, from early on, one of the pioneers of computer graphics as we know them. He talks about this a lot. This is some of the hardest problems that we've taken on in a generation of computer scientists. And I came up in an easy period, and boy, we're at the hard stuff now. Another one. Oh, actually, just as it's fun. Actually, you are a big time gamer, Archie. Give me the #1 game that you're enjoying in VR right now. You're a big time gamer, VR gamer. You're in there every week.
Yeah. Getting through the pandemic, playing multiplayer VR games was like one of my favorite things. And, at the beginning, one of my favorite games was Arizona Sunshine. It was one of the first ones with multiplayer. But then more games came out over the course of the pandemic, which was awesome. And I've talked a lot about Onward. That I think is an awesome game. The designers of it are really, really talented. I think did a great job with it. And then there's a whole interesting community of folks who are designing custom boards, which I really enjoy and like playing those. Beat Saber just added multiplayer recently, so that's been a lot of fun. I just posted a video of me doing Beat Saber, which is pretty fun. I still have a little way to go on that. I can beat a lot of the levels on expert, but I'm not expert plus yet. The new mixtape that came out last week, the Interscope mixtape, the new music pack, good stuff. So there were I think there's like 7 or 8 good songs in there that have been pretty fun to play. But I don't know. I'm Onward, I think, is probably my main thing by hours.
There was something really elegant about starting the pandemic playing Arizona Sunshine. Just a good old fashioned like zombie apocalypse shooter.
Yeah, good old fashioned zombie apocalypse. Yeah, it's like you're just there with your friends killing zombies.
And I hype this whenever I get a chance. But if you don't follow John Carmack on Twitter, you should. He posts room codes every week to play multiplayer Beat Saber against him. He is not easy to beat. I have not.
Yeah. No, I'm not there yet.
I've managed to beat him in a couple levels of Pistol Whip, which has kind of been my go-to lately.
I like that game too.
Yeah, trying to get fit, trying to get those quads going. But man, I cannot take him on Beat Saber. Okay, I got one that I'll answer from Chad. Ads are running in the Oculus app. Are we going to have ads in VR too? Yeah, Chad, I think you probably are. I don't think you'll hate them as much as your question suggests that you might. One thing that people forget about the ecosystem around applications and games is that they really rely on distribution, and that's not new. They've always relied on distribution. In fact, previously, part of the reason there was these big game publishers is because they could have enough kind of clout with retailers to get distribution, and advertising is a big part of that. I have long history with this. Long before I was working on Facebook Reality Labs, even when I was working on Facebook ads, mobile app install ads were powered casual gaming for an entire generation of players. And casual gaming, at times, I think, especially at the height of the mobile boom, is bigger than any kind of gaming. I mean, people just playing casual, easy playing games. So I do think ads are super important. You can pick your favorite indie developer, pick any game you love. Go ask the developer how they feel about having the ability to promote their applications in places that give them a good return on their investment, whether it be on Facebook, Instagram, or in the Oculus app. So promotion is actually important. It's not just like a thing that you have to struggle through, though I respect we want those ads to be as good as possible. I don't want to sell you garbage. So if you see garbage, you can report it. Heck, you can report it to me. So I think for me, and then likewise in VR, at some point when there's an economy there, you need to power that economy. That doesn't mean it has to be intrusive or bad. And I think we all know what bad ads are. We hate bad ads as much as anybody, probably more, since it causes me to get more questions like this. So it's on us to make that a good experience. It's on us to make that, to live up to your expectations, Chad. But yeah, they are a little bit there and probably more coming. And by the way, they also drive down the cost, I should mention, of both the content as it gets a broader distribution base, and of the hardware upon which that content is built. And that's an important piece for us. We do want this to be accessible. In fact, that's my next question. I saw it in here. How are you going to lower barriers to emerging technologies like augmented reality? Mark, one of the things that's been so important to us for all the products that we've built is that we get them out there and everybody can use them. And that's when you're building communication tools, you're building these utilities that give people power. That's always been so important to us. How can we, how are we thinking about augmented reality where these technologies are new? They're going to start out kind of expensive. How does that play out over time?
Yeah, I think that there's two big pieces here in terms of the experience and how you get it to be accessible. One thing that I think people probably underrate is that if you're delivering a product that's about presence, you really can't have wires, right? And I think so that's probably not the most obvious place to go with this question, but I do think that if you want this to be something that a lot of people are going to experience, it needs to be a good experience. If you're trying to deliver a sense of presence, you don't want a wire wrapped around your neck. It really like breaks the whole thing. So I think that is going to be the bar for VR and AR products of kind of high quality going forward. And I think you'll kind of see the market split into, wired experiences, which are maybe going to be less accessible to a broader number of people. And then the things that I think are going to be the mainstream line of technology, even if it's a little harder to develop, I think getting on that wireless path is really important. The other piece, that you were alluding to is just kind of getting the price to be as affordable as possible, right? If your mission as a company is to serve as many people as possible, then fundamentally you're not trying to charge a premium for your devices, you're trying to drive the price down as much as possible, including potentially, even doing what consoles have historically done, which is, at the beginning when they ship something, they know that they're going to be selling it for a little bit, and then they're going to be able to make it cheaper, but they even subsidize it a little bit up front with the hope that an expectation that they'll basically make that up on app sales and on other experiences in the rest of the economy around it. So, that's going to be more our plan, right? In VR and AR, we're coming at this from the perspective of how do we get this in as many people as possible's hands, which is going to mean how do you make the price as low as possible for people? We're not looking for ways to go out of our way to, basically charge a premium for folks. And I think that is going to be, I think, a pretty big defining thing for how many people can use this stuff over the next 5-10 years.
Yeah, it's a good point, and people forget about this. There's also kind of a total cost of ownership story. I've told this story with VR a bunch of times. 5 years ago, in a few months, we launched Rift. The total cost, was a $700, $800 device, and then you've also got a machine on top of that. Oh, I think we lost Mark, but it's okay. We'll let him come back. I'm still talking. And so that was a total cost of ownership of almost $2,000. Now you're talking about all in at $300. It's a game changer.